First, I'd like to personally thank Chancellor May and the entire UC Davis community for your generosity in hosting this tribute to Officer Natalie Corona. It is very important for us to have this service here in the community she served and in front of those that she swore to protect. You made that happen. I spent the last week searching for the words that could adequately describe Officer Corona for all of you here today and what she meant to the Davis Police Department and the city of Davis. Some of the words come rather easily: smart, educated, capable, mature beyond her years, athletic, and a genuinely nice person with a deep sense of purpose and a desire to help others. It's what she meant to us and this community that is harder to describe, but I'm going to try. I also want to share a few thoughts with our community, our department, and of course to Natalie's parents and her family. First, a little bit about Officer Corona. She started at the Davis Police Department January 4th, 2016 as a part-time community service officer, or CSO. At the time, she was also attending Woodland Community College, where she would later graduate as a 4.0 student with 3 associate's degrees, 2 in administration and justice and 1 in humanities. Her plan was to finish field training and then immediately move on to the university to continue her education. It wasn't long after Natalie started that we realized we hired someone special. Officer Corona was smart and motivated, enthusiastic, and had incredible energy. She literally exuded energy to the likes of nobody I've seen before. She immediately stood out, and not just because she was taller than nearly everybody, but because of how special that she was. One of the things we learned from her background investigation was that she had a hard time saying no. We heard it from her mom, we heard it from her sisters, we heard it from coworkers, we heard it from pretty much everybody who we spoke to during the background investigation. And it turns out the statement was true. She did never say no, and nor ever let on that she was stretched a little too thin. As a CSO, she did data entry. She worked in crime analysis, code enforcement, report writing, and records. She basically did whatever anyone asked her to do. And to be honest, I never actually figured out which of the positions that she held because she was doing them all. Officer Corona was bilingual. She spoke Spanish. I recall that soon after she started, we had a sensitive criminal investigation and needed a good translator. She was young and not really experienced at the time, but I knew that she could step up and do the job competently, and she certainly did. She was just mature beyond her years. When Officer Corona was at work, she worked. One day her supervisor saw her in the break room, cleaning up the tables and taking out the trash. And she asked her, "Natalie, it's not really your job, what are you doing?" And she said, "I finished up my regular duties and I just needed to stay busy." That's the kind of person that she was. She took on whatever task needed to be done. Officer Corona's desire was to be a police officer from an early age on. There's no doubt about that. It wasn't long after she started that I kept hearing her name, along with, "We have to send her to the academy." I cannot tell you how many times that I heard it, and I heard it from everybody. I kept having to tell people, I know, I get it, we're gonna send her. Even though I said it, I kept hearing it. Until even when we said, "Okay, we got your date, you're going to the academy," I kept hearing people, "You gotta send her to the academy, she's going." So from the time that she was a CSO, we had gotten her into the academy in July of 2017, but she got injured. And at that point, we're in a little bit of a pickle because the funding had run out for her paid position at that time. And so we had about 6 months until she started the academy in January. And we told her, "Don't worry, we'll get you into the academy, everything will be okay." But she hung out and she wanted to be involved, so she volunteered. You know, as a part-time community service officer, she only had to work 20 hours a week. That's what we were funded for. But when she was a volunteer, we saw her all the time because there was no cap. And she literally continued to do everything. I remember one day she came in and she was out with code enforcement. They had just cleaned up a camp. And it was one of the few times that I'd ever seen Natalie. She looked kind of a mess. Clearly, she had worked hard. And I went up to her and I said, Natalie, you already got the job. You don't have to volunteer to, and you don't have to do this. She just looked at me with that big smile, Ms. Corona, the full teeth smile. And she said, yes, sir. And I knew right then and there she was going to ignore everything that I said. Officer Corona attended the academy from January to June 21st, 2018. She was officially hired as a police officer on July 2nd, 2018, was ceremoniously sworn in on April 2nd, 2018, where her father pinned her badge, and completed field training on December 12th. She started as a solo patrol officer just a few weeks ago. Although she was just beginning her career, she had already made an impact. And although she was young, she was seasoned and ready. We lost her way too soon. Simply put, the loss of Officer Natalie Corona has been devastating. To our Davis community, a question that I'm commonly asked is whether we are hiring the right officers to police here in Davis with, well, all of its unique qualities. And being from Davis, I gotta say that we're a little unique. To answer succinctly, not only are we hiring the right officers, but we're hiring some of the best. And Officer Corona was at the top of the list. Policing may have been in her blood, and she certainly liked the action and the thrill of it all, but she had another side. She clearly understood community policing and her role as a guardian to the community. She had a strong desire to make personal connections. That was her biggest strength. And she genuinely cared about other people, all people. She was driven by making others feel better. She was a rare individual, the cop that you wanted to show up when you called for help. When asked what her long-term goals were, she simply stated, be the best police officer I can be for the city of Davis. To be clear, Officer Corona could have worked anywhere, and she chose us and to police here. She was very loyal to Davis. We've lost an officer that truly embodied our policing philosophy. I will always be sad that many of you never got the opportunity to have her serve you. When something like this happens, many, sometimes rightfully so, ask who's to blame, who can we blame, or who dropped the ball. We do this to make sense of it all and to ensure that someone is held responsible when something goes terribly wrong. Whether this is right or wrong, we always do it. We're always looking for someone to hold responsible. It's how we can process and bring closure to chaos and calm fear. It makes us feel like we've done something. I need to prepare everybody for the simple reality here. We know who committed this atrocity, but we never know why. We don't know why yet, and so far we have nothing to really explain it. It very well could be that the sole responsible person simply made a choice that ended the life of Officer Natalie Corona. Well, that's not logical, and there may not ever be the sense of closure. You need to prepare yourself for that reality. It doesn't look like anyone dropped the ball. I know that the last week has been difficult for this community and things have changed. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, this is Davis. Nothing like that could ever happen here. Well, it did. But that doesn't mean that we have to move on with fear and trepidation. We are resilient. Let's not be divisive and separate. Let's use this as an opportunity to come together and find ways to protect our community. And I do mean our entire community. To the Davis Police Department, Natalie touched us all. I think we could all agree that she always had the biggest smile in the room and was always the most enthusiastic in the room. About what? Everything. She was our biggest cheerleader, We need more of that. So a few things. First, and probably this goes without saying, let's find ways to honor and remember her. Let's do that together. Natalie was a very special person. She deserves something very special in return. As a smaller department, we've always had the opportunity to be close, like a family. And like any other family, at times we bicker. But this week we've come together like I've never seen before. Let's keep doing that. If Natalie were here, I'm quite positive that she would lead the way. That's who she was. As Sergeant Labby said, Natalie did nothing wrong. She was simply doing her job, completing a routine task. She did everything right. She was well trained. She grew up being around cops. She had spent plenty of time in the field, and she knew what she was doing. Her academy instructors and field training officers did everything they could to ensure that she'd be safe and handle anything that came her way. But the reality is, we generally train for what's predictable. A cop can only be so vigilant and still accomplish the task at hand. There's only one person to blame, and that's the person who decided to fire the gun. Don't hold yourself responsible for something you couldn't prevent. You may ask, why Natalie? Why now? For some, you may find solace that everything happens for a reason. We may never know what the reason is. Sometimes you have to contemplate that. Sometimes you have to come together and work through it together. Find positive ways to move forward together with renewed energy brought to us by this shining star. Please, as we move through emotions, don't let guilt be one of them. You all did right by Natalie, and she kept telling me that all the time. This is a formal occasion to honor Natalie and for everybody in the arena to show their due respect. We want to look our best, we want to be our best, but officers of the police department, I'd like you to look around right now. I'd like you to take a really good look. They're all here to honor Natalie. But we're also surrounded by people, and sadly, many who have been through this before, and they're all here to support you as well. Make sure that you reach out today and you make a connection. The room is full of people that want to help us. Let's take it. I have every confidence that each and every one of you will hit the streets and continue to do your jobs, and in the Davis way. And as you look for courage to do so, take Natalie's lead. We have the photo of Natalie, as beautiful as she can be, holding the thin blue line. In her own words, she said, "I would like this photograph to serve as my gratitude for all those law enforcement men and women who have served, who are currently serving, and those who have died in the line of duty protecting our liberties in this great country." As young as she was, the words contain incredible strength and wisdom. Natalie knew full well the job came with risk, and that protecting liberty may result in death, even her own. Yet, she wrapped herself in it. She embraced it, and she put on the badge. Let's honor her by continuing to do the same. Davis PD, serve with pride. To Natalie's family, Mr. and Mrs. Corona, Jackie, Kathy, Cindy, you have shown incredible strength at a time when most everybody else would simply fall. I honestly don't know how you've done that. Mr. and Mrs. Corona, I want you to know that you raised an incredible daughter. Natalie possessed all the positive attributes that you could look for in a person. She had to have gotten that from you. Natalie was well loved at Davis PD and here in the community. She bravely reported to duty. She did everything that was expected and much more. I've been at the police department for a really long time, and I've really never seen anybody who acclimated so quickly and made such a strong impression on everybody that she came into contact with. Natalie was truly unique, like no other. I interviewed Natalie and spoke to her several times as she went through the hiring process, and I can tell you without hesitation, she wanted to be a cop. It was truly in her blood. She was ready to do this. She was determined to do this, and there were several times as people told me about her work, I would simply say, I know. Simply put, Natalie got it. I had little doubt that she would go far at Davis PD, and I had already placed a bet that one day she'd be the police chief. I know what it takes, and she had it. Natalie was a role model, a hero, a young woman. She could connect with our student community. She could connect with the children in town. She was friendly, approachable, determined, and an excellent fit for this profession. I always appreciate how much she wanted to be a cop, how hard she worked for it, and how much she wanted to be here in Davis, my hometown. The last week's been painful for everyone, but Natalie has not been forgotten. Our law enforcement partners, the members of our community, and people all over have reached out. We received well wishes from all over the nation. The halls in the police department are lined with messages of love and support for all of you. Everyone is finding their own way to express how sorry they are to you. Know that Natalie's life meant something to all of us. I will forever honor her and her sacrifice for this community. She will not be forgotten, and neither will you. You will always be part of the Davis PD family. Lastly, you delivered to us the perfect cop. Our commitment to you was to get her home. Know that we tried. We all tried our very best. I'm so sorry that we didn't get her back home to you. For that, we will always be indebted to you. Officer Natalie Corona's badge number is 224. Number 224 is hereafter retired, as is her call sign, X-ray 33. Her name will be placed in a prominent place in the department as a memorial to her service and making the ultimate sacrifice in the performance of her duties. Officer Natalie Corona is posthumously awarded the Purple Heart for receiving life-ending injuries at the hostile hand of another in the performance of her duties. She is also awarded the Medal of Distinction for all of the reasons I've described here today. Lastly, Officer Corona is awarded the Cantrell Citation, honorably named after the only other Davis police officer who died in the performance of his duties. The citation, consisting of Officer Corona's badge, will be presented to you now.